this side of the hall. Number 1. Number 2, sir. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. I want one more. That gentleman right at the very back in the corner. You, sir. Yes, number 7. Wait. Right, we've got 7. Number 8. Number 9. Number 10. Number 11. Number 12. 13. 14, ma'am. I'm in the chair. 14, sir. Right. Now I'm coming upstairs. I'm going to take 6 hands upstairs. Number 1, sir, in the front. Number 2, sir, there. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5 at the back there. Number 6 standing up. Thank you very much. Now, when I call your number, you will speak for the required amount of time. But the important thing is, we don't want 1A, 1B, 1C. So you saw who it was around you who put up their hands. Just shout out loudly if someone stands up who wasn't nominated. Say 5B. Okay. Right. Who was number 1? Over to you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. President and everyone. My name is Orlando Lucy. I'll keep it to within 2 minutes, MEC. You had my vote, Mr. President, when you were still in business. You were chairing a session at the planning, in the development of the National Development Plan. I was still a state employee. So, you have my vote. That's a given. My comments basically touch on 3 things. How you're going to ensure that the state is made efficient and fair in how it allocates resources. Specific point that I'm raising now is that for the last 2 years, I've been trying to bring a project into the country in the aviation space, requiring about 800 million in investment. Complied with everything. IDC was brilliant. Black Industrialist Fund fell off the face of the earth. Months, if not a year down the line, I still am to hear, having complied with everything, why the process is not unfolding. The second one is that if we're being blunt with where the country has been, you have had 2 very strong personalities, and it is not about the personalities, but I'm saying the phenomenon it created. I hope you will have your own impact in terms of how the state machinery functions. Third one, if we say the state has been captured, therefore the ANC must have been captured first. What are your plans in terms of dealing with that?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Question number 2.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. My name is Cassie Oukamp. I'm a dominee in a Reformed Church. Also was for 5 years been in Parliament. That was in the good times when the President was not there. I want to ask him, I've learned him, and I've seen what he says and so on, as a man that is for sound economical principles. Free enterprise, private ownership, etc. But the backbone of private and free enterprise is private ownership. Whether it's a farm or a business or a buffalo, doesn't matter. Yeah. Now, I want to ask the President, how is it possible that he can be an advocate for private enterprise, private ownership, but at the same time for dispossession without compensation? It just doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 3.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Jean Cooper. I'm a psychologist. And I think we all know that South Africa has a very traumatic social past. And as psychologists, we know that untreated and unworked with traumas tend to repeat themselves. And I would like to know from you, Mr. President, if you have any plans to focus specific attention and money towards programs to assist us to continue the healing process. Us here, victims, perpetrators, privileged and poor, we still have a long way to go. The TRC scratched the surface, and we know that there's a lot of work still to do. I think the fact that we are here together says that we have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. But it's not going to happen if there's not dedicated, specific programs to create spaces where we can really talk through and work through the traumas of our past. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 4.
Thanks, Mr. Director. Good evening, President. My name is Thabo Magandana. I'm a PhD candidate in animal production management with the University of Pretoria. My topic is on the current issue, which is climate change. Currently, I'm a full-time student. Like many of us who are students in the universities and tertiary institutions, we are not at this level because we want this level in terms of education, but because there are no job opportunities or funding. So I just want to ask you, just like other people in my field, that is agriculture, who are currently unemployed or without funding, but on daily basis we are told that agriculture is the backbone of our economy, especially in South Africa. But as especially black students at postgraduate level, they are not employed. And those who want to get employment, they're not employed, and those who want to get funding so that they can do their own businesses, they're not funded. What are your plans, President, to people like us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, number 7, at the back there. Do you have a loud voice, sir, or shall we bring you the microphone?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try. My name is Johan Erasmus, Mr. President. I'm from a group called Beter Einders. And I do not, thank you. Is that better? Okay. I'm Mr. President. My name is still Johan Erasmus. From a group called Beter Einders. And I want to thank you in advance, Mr. President, for the selfie that we're going to take later. I appreciate that. Then, secondly, I just want to say that I do not buy into the white thing. Humble, really humble about I say that from the bottom of my heart. Having said that, I am a little bit concerned about the rhetoric that I find within political and academic elites. It goes something like this. Your predecessor said this, Mr. President, that South Africa's problem started when Jan van Riebeeck came here recently. I think there was the Minister of Arts and Culture, Martin Ketwa, said when Jan van Riebeeck came, that killed Solomon Moshangu. And I'm a little bit worried about that kind of rhetoric. You used it yourself, Mr. President, when you talked about Rwanda's position in this country as the original sin of South Africa. And I do not want to trivialize or minimize the horrendous effects of colonialism on this country. I don't want to address that sort of pain. But I am a little bit worried about a new type of black nationalism that is framing the discussion in a context where this was paradise. And then when whites came, they brought sin with them. That's the original sin. And maybe to go back to utopia, we need to expel whites. I don't know. And it just reeks a lot like Afrikaner nationalism, this new kind of black nationalism. And I think we need to address the past, we need to address inequality, but I'm a little bit worried about this narrative which is addressed. I think there's a question. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving over here, number 8.
Thank you, MEC, and good evening, Mr. President. My name is Cyril, and I'm a businessman. And I believe, as Mr. Makura said, that you are arguably, possibly the best guy to take our country through the coming elections. But having said that, I'm a bit worried that you were the one instituting the Zondo Commission. We've heard through the Zondo Commission and what happened at Bosasa. We actually saw that the whole of the ANC, or the majority of the ANC, was shown up to be corrupt. Now, my question is, and this was debated on a TV program about a week ago, where they said that it will be impossible to get rid of you after the elections, which is good news, I believe. That's very good news. But they also said that it is impossible to get rid of, I believe, the two biggest looters in the country, and excuse me for that, Mr. Ismagashule and Mr. David Mabuza. Now, if we vote for you and you take our country through the first 5 years, and we are then left with them, what is going to happen to our country after that? Thank you very much.
Number 9.
Good evening, Mr. Ramaphosa and some other people that I know quite well. I'm Offie Hofmeyer. I'm a theologian, so I'm also like you, Mr. Ramaphosa, in the hopelessness. Essentially, I have been around for about 73 years, so Mr. Hofmeyer and myself have been together at university, though different universities have been really great friends of mine, though we have differed, especially in the last couple of years, about what's going on in our country. Essentially, I see the history of our country in the contradiction between the dream that we have and the nightmare. And I'm not going into any detail in that respect. Essentially, Mr. Ramaphosa, can I very clearly express to you that I see you to be part of the dream of this beautiful country, which has a major role to play in this world and a major role to play in Africa. But Mr. Ramaphosa, I'm so sorry to say that your party is part of the nightmare. And I say that in great respect, very great respect, as a theologian specifically in the whole business. But we have to be forthright, we have to be honest about things. My question to you would be, Mr. Ramaphosa, what are you going to do in the next 9 days to indicate to us, as regardless of color, creed, whatever, I have so many friends across all borders and whatever. What are you going to do in the next 9 days? And what promises are you going to give us in the next 9 days in terms of what is going to be happening in the first, say, 9 weeks of the new government? We trust you, we pray for you, but we are extremely worried because we are a lost people at this stage. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2.
Mr. President, my name is Fred Comfort. I've got 2 questions for you, but I've got to create a little bit of a context. About 2 weeks ago, at an opportunity where 30,000 firearms were destroyed, the Minister of Police made a statement in which he referred to looking forward to a future where there will not be any private ownership of firearms. Only the armed forces would own firearms. The second part of the context that I've got to create refers to a leaked draft bill that became available in 2018, in which no provision is made for self-defense as a reason to own a firearm. Now, my 2 questions are, would you mind to share with us your view and the longer-term view of the ANC, your party, on private firearm ownership? The second question is, based on the statement that I want to make that the Central Firearms Registry has been in disarray since its creation in 2006 and still is, what is the intention to get this sorted out and ensure that we have good management of firearm ownership in the country? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Number 11.
From the Department of Basic Education. My first question is on the current procurement rules that we have in our country. Unfortunately, it's come to the point where it's basically impossible to spend any of our money. And although we have a lot of resources, procuring schools, procuring services has become virtually impossible. And if we do manage to get through the procurement process, it costs us 4 times the price that it would have cost in the private sector. And I would like to know if you're reconsidering the PPMA rules to allow us to spend our resources. The second question is on the tablet promises that you've made. Currently, tablets is a 29 billion rand investment that our country is going to make. It's an investment that many other countries have made and have unfortunately resulted in no outcomes in terms of learning outcomes specifically for learners. I'd like to know whether the ANC would reconsider this promise and perhaps think through more sustainable and more responsible ways of investing resources, either through computer labs and well-resourced and well-equipped teachers and technical staff to schools to allow them to embark on the 4th Industrial Revolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 12.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Mr. President, good evening. My name is Cyril. I'm a professor in entrepreneurship at the University of Pretoria. Mr. President, I've got 2 short questions for you. I think that, with all due respect, let's leave out the philosophical and the political and everything regarding the land. I've got a very simple question. Step by step, I'm academic, so I need to think the way we work it out. Step by step, how are you going to then expropriate land to benefit somebody then eventually in the end? And then I want to ask the second question, and that is, how are we going to change that entrepreneurial mindset in this country? A lot of the SASSA grant holders are, for example, than the SASSA grant holders to be able to serve, but we can be able to get economic activity going. Thank you.
Number 13.
Good evening, Mr. President. Chris Brink, citizen of South Africa. My question is, I want to know how you're going to get South Africa working in the sense of everyone putting together in a common direction. And talking about direction, I would like to know, if we give you 2 terms, what would be your dream for South Africa after those 2 terms?
Thank you very much. Number 14 was here.
Good evening, everybody. His Excellency, the President, the father of our nation. On my side, I find that the future is actually a blank check for all of us to write something that will solve.
Sorry, your name?
Oh, by the way, sorry. My name is Johnny Ngwenya. I'm coming from a non-profit organization called Infinity. We deal with the STEM and the robotics. We are actually focusing in the future of our country. We are currently operating.
I think you must use your time on your question.
Okay, the solution that we have, we are saying to ourselves that we want to incorporate kids from different walks of life, especially those who are previously unprivileged. Teaching them mathematics and science and robotics. We understand that the World Economic Forum, South Africa is rated as number 128. We want to bridge that gap. We want to fast track. We want to work together. We want to change the equation, meaning that how can you say to the kids, do not do drugs, but what gadgets are you giving the kids that will keep them hooked, that will keep them in the future? That is our passionate. We want to actually change the future. We are saying to the President, we are here and we want to not the issue of this consumer mentality. We want to be manufacturers, producers, but let's start from our kids. The kids are the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're now going upstairs. Have we got the roving mic upstairs?
Yes.
Yes, please bring to the first hand that's at the front. This is number 15.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. President. I'm Chris Klopper. I'm from the South Afrikaanse Onderwysersunie. You will remember that we had a discussion with you beginning of last year, just after the Hoërskool Oorval fiasco. And the discussion emanated from the fact that we wanted to avert a repetition of it. Minister Angie Mashega and myself, and some other colleagues, we attended the Hoërskool Oorval, and there was an undertaking to prevent something like that again. Now this year, the MEC for Education in Gauteng, he released and published regulations that centralize all powers of governing bodies in the Department of Education. They do not recognize the powers of school governing bodies, and the entrance and the registration of learners are actually a one-size-fits-all position. And at the end of the day, we completely ignore the status of Afrikaans as a language of instruction, and I would like to hear from you, what are we intending to do to prevent the fact that Afrikaans will not die at public schools? And secondly, what are we going to do to ensure that school governing bodies are an extension of the community that they represent? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 16.
Good evening, Mr. President. My name is Ricardo Rocha. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm very proud to be born and bred in Pretoria. All my businesses I've tried to keep in Pretoria. I'm now in the process of starting another business, and I've done my research. It's a global business, and cities like Sydney, for example, offer a program where if you bring funding, they match that funding. The city actually matches the funding. And I think that's something that's quite brilliant, because what it does is it uses the private sector to vet the company, get the funding, and then we then keep the jobs within that city. What are your plans to do something like that? Thanks.
Thank you. Number 17.
Evening, Mr. President. Thank you for taking the time to come to this. My name is Milan Swart. I'm a postgraduate student in engineering. Evening, Mr. President. Thank you for taking the time to come to this conversational engagement. These continued conversations are crucial if our country is going to move forward in a realistic, democratic way. I've got 3 statements followed by a question. Firstly, the latest climate science released in 2019, February, suggests that previous climate predictions are understated, to say the least. So our hopes of reaching a 2-degree increase, or limiting the atmospheric temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius is probably not going to happen. Secondly, our country sits on an abundant solar resource and mineral resources. So my question to you is this: how are you going to help ensure we utilize and protect our abundant resources so that we realize this growth you propose in an environmentally sustainable and conscious manner, and so that all South Africans benefit first? I'm talking action plans driven by experienced leaders, like MEC mentioned, with real short to medium term outcomes and deadlines, not only policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's now number 18.
Ndi Matekwana, Mr. President. Good evening, everybody else. My name is Gert van der Walt. I'm a father. I walk to school with my boy, who's 8 years old, and he points to a poster on one of the lampposts, pointing to a man with a red hat, and he says to me, he's seen that man on the television, but that man is always angry, and he's getting the impression that that man is angry at white people. So he asks me whether white people did something wrong. It was a long conversation. And then I'm going to pose a question to you, Mr. President, that I really seriously need answering. You might not believe me, but I actually, on my way here, I was called by Mr. Musi Maimani. He calls me quite regularly nowadays. I was trying to ask him this, but he kind of interrupts me all the time. But I asked him this question. I understand, and in my conversation to my son, I can understand that a man can and should be found guilty. But can a race and should a race be found guilty? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Number 19. I think we were on this side. Yes.
Right. Evening, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to raise 2 points. The one is going to be about healthcare. The one is going to be about
your name, sir?
Oh, Rowan Kilov. I'm a final year student at UP studying law. So two-part question. The one is going to be on healthcare and the other one is going to be on education. In terms of the healthcare, Mr. President, it's about the NHI and all the concerns that, the Act in its how it's written and as well as the implementation, how that is done. Mr. President, the pilot programs have failed. How are we going to address some of those failures? And as well as, can we clearly get an answer on how the funding is going to work for the NHI, as well as what is the role going to be for the medical schemes that are currently in existence? Because an auxiliary role, as it is described in the legislation, is not enough. The second part of the question is regarding education. I work for a student organization, TULIP, the Tax Leadership in Individual program, and we work at 4 previously disadvantaged schools, 2 in Mamelodi and 2 in Laudium. And one of the main problems we have there is the students have the idea that the tertiary institutions will contact them and invite them to come and study, and then they don't apply. Bright minds that we're losing because they don't understand. So I would like to ask the President, how are we going to address such a problem, especially with tertiary education and in those schools?
Thank you very much. The last question, number 20. No?
Hello.
Program director and the president of the country. Okay. Yeah, good evening everyone, and especially our president that we love so much. And my questions are 2 actually. I'm a woman, I'm a single mother. And my concern is around the price of petrol and the price of electricity, because those things are very, very high, really. And it's taking away the money from the house. Actually, we can't even afford petrol going high all the time, and electricity. These 2 things are a nightmare to me. I don't know about the other people, but to me, they are a nightmare, President. We need to regulate. Petrol is going high all the time. Even today, there's a notice that on the 1st, petrol is going high. So there's no regulations there. We don't know how. And the same goes for electricity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening. My
Can we
name.
just, sorry, before we go to, because we had 20 questions, right? So I'm not sure who's saying good evening. But could we just give the mic back to question 19? You had 2 parts to your question. Yes. If you don't mind just repeating the second part.
The second part?
Yes.
Oh, it's on education. So
yes, please, if you could just repeat that
all
again.
right. I work for a student organization named TULIP, the Tax Leadership and Individual program. And we work at 4 schools, 2 in Mamelodi and 2 of them in Laudium. And one of the main problems that we have with the students, regardless from the teachers not pitching up and such, is the students have a mindset that the tertiary institutions will invite them to come and study. So they don't actually go and apply and go through that process.
So we lose bright minds who can actually go to these, they have the marks for it. So we lose them, and they can actually make a difference and go back into the community, but they're lost because they don't actually apply. So how would the president address such an issue in schools like in Laudium or in Mamelodi?
So you're saying that students have this view that they should be invited to...
Yes, and more than once a student has come up to me and said, no, they're still waiting for their letter from the university to invite them to go to university.
All right. No, that's clear. Thank you. Now, somebody was saying good evening. Can you wave to me?
Yes, I was.
Where are you, sir?
I'm here. Chairperson at...
Okay. All right. Now, I suspect you are 20B, but because question number 5 didn't appear,
Yes.
We'll give you the slot of question number 5.
Thank you very much. I thought I was squeezing my question on the basis of the absence of question 5. My name is Sipom Tsweni, and I'm a co-founder of Workplace Outreach Program. And Mr. President, it's actually an opportunity for many parties, but I realize that all of them are missing this aspect. The fourth industrial revolution, it's actually ahead of us, it's not upon us, because it's fast moving. Yet, its fundamental role of moving that is the price of data. And none of the parties have taken advantage of that. Can this be an opportunity through which the ANC can take an advantage of this and convince the private sector to, because currently South Africa is the highest globally in terms of price of data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for those interesting and pertinent questions and comments. I'm sure you will agree that amongst yourselves you have managed to cover every major issue that is facing us in this election. Having said that, President Ramaphosa, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Barbara. And good evening to all of you. It's a real joy and a pleasure to stand before you and answer all these very difficult questions. If I had known that the questions would be so difficult, I might have changed my mind about coming. And I want to extend my greetings to the leadership of the ANC at the national level and also at provincial level, members of the National Executive Committee who are here and provincial, as well as our regional committee, and various leaders of various formations. It's a real joy and a pleasure to be here with you. Tonight, I was really delighted when I saw Ruth Meyer standing at the door. I haven't seen him for a very long time, so it was great to see my old mate once again. We used to have a great deal of fun, Ruth and I, when we were younger and much more handsome. Let me preface what I'd like to say in responding to the questions by saying we just really 7 days or 8 days before the elections. And this has been a great moment, not only for us who are campaigning for our parties to succeed in these elections, but also for South Africans. South Africans have once again had an opportunity to engage on key national issues and have a conversation amongst themselves, together with leaders or various people who are campaigning. And for us, it has also been a great opportunity to be able to move around and visit our people, go through the length and the breadth of the country and go to areas that we should go to, that we sometimes never really find the time to go. And I've been to rural areas, walked the pathways of our villages and to the townships and to the cities, walked the boulevards of our cities and engaged with our people. And it's really been an enriching process. And through this period, I've been forming in my head and in my mind the types of things that we need to do post this election. The various themes that I've been picking up, that our people have been beaming to me, are solidifying in my head and in my mind. And these are some of the things that we will want to take forward. So this engagement with you is very, very important to us. It's not just a campaign evening, it's a serious engagement, because through talking to you and hearing all these questions, not only questions but also your concerns, we're able to form, to arrive at themes of issues that we need to address. And some of the issues that have been raised in the questions are things that we will definitely want to embark on. I also want to preface what I'm going to say in answering some of the questions by taking you back to 2017 when I was elected president of the ANC. It was a really involved campaign to finally get to the point when I was elected. I got out of that conference in Nasrec in December of 2017, really with 3 overriding mandates. The 3 overriding mandates for me were: 1, and they had sub-mandates, which I will talk about, were: 1, go out and renew the ANC. And this was born out of a recognition and an admission by the ANC itself, which the then Secretary General, Gwede Mantashe, articulated in his Secretary General's report. He went into a diagnostic type of analysis of the ills that were besetting and in some ways continue to beset the ANC. And he went really deep and spoke about issues of corruption and that the state capture has been a major, major challenge to the ANC itself, and spoke about how we've allowed the state also to be affected by the bad things that have been happening in our own party. And having gone into that depth, he then said, we need to turn around, we need to renew the African National Congress. And the conference then resolved that one of the things that we have to do post that conference is to embark on a journey of renewal, to renew the ANC. And renewal is not just, a loose word. It's a very involved term because it talks about how we were going to do things, how we were going to return the ANC to a value system that is underpinned by integrity, truthfulness, honor, and all those things. That is what we now need to do to renew the ANC. Because we admitted in his report as well that we had lost our way. We had departed from the path that had been treaded by the giants of our movement like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and many others. And the conference gave me that mandate and said, go out and renew the ANC. It gave the National Executive Committee that was elected that precise mandate. The other mandate, a sub-mandate to that, is to renew South Africa. Go out and renew South Africa, because South Africa had been battered. Over the past few years, had really been battered, and state capture is a derivative of that, and that we should renew South Africa. And part of that process must be to ensure that we do it visibly. And doing it visibly has also meant that, and the conference discussed the issue of the commissions, that go out and establish those commissions. Those commissions must get underway and unravel the truth so that we know precisely what has happened, so that we never, ever, ever go back to what was happening in the past. So that was the to renew South Africa. The other major mandate I was then given, and we were all given as the National Executive Committee, was to unite the ANC. The ANC is a political organization, and political organizations will always have people who have different views on many issues. It happens all the time. It even happens in religious organizations. It even happens in the Roman Catholic Church, in the Anglican Church. We all know. Even in the churches, there are always differences and different groupings and all that. But the conference felt that we needed to unite the ANC, because when the ANC is divided, it has an impact on what we need to do to serve our people. So that was another key mandate I was given. But the other key mandate, which is a sub-mandate to that, is to unite South Africa. To unite South Africa and make sure that the divisions that were forming, the non-adherence, for instance, to the overriding principle of non-racialism, which is really the founding stone, the foundation of what the ANC stands for, should also be adhered to unite all the people of South Africa across, our races, religion, gender, and so forth. The other important overriding mandate that I was given was to build a social compact of all South Africans, so that with that we are better armed to address the challenges that our country faces, challenges of unemployment, of inequality, and also of poverty. Conference took the view that we would never be able to address these challenges working alone as the African National Congress. And to this end, many of you will have seen that my presidency has been defined by calling people, all sectors, to work together. And I've held quite a number of iterations to that end, where we get people to work together on all manner of things, be it health, be it unemployment, be it religious, and so forth. We've brought people together so that we can all work together. And that has been born out of the mandate that I was given, mandate of building a social compact. And why has that been important? I've taken the view that that is the one thing that has stood South Africa in good stead. That is the one thing that is part of our DNA. We were able to resolve what the world regarded as an intractable problem of moving away from a divisive history of apartheid and embraced democracy and human rights. We did that because we were able to work together. That was preceded, you might all recall, by what we did in dealing with violence that was breaking out throughout our country when we had the peace accord. The peace accords, which were largely led by business people as well as by religious people, and they dragged us along as politicians, was the genesis of that DNA process that we now have as a nation. They brought us together, we had a peace accord, and we were able to reduce the levels of violence. And thereafter, it was time then to get into the political negotiations that finally yielded the interim constitution as well as the final constitution, where people who would never ever have worked together were able to work together to give us this South Africa that we have. And this South Africa we have is a product of all of us. It's not a product of one single individual or one entity. Mandela was the leader, yes, of that whole process. And F.W. de Klerk contributed, and many other leaders, Thabo Mbeki and many others contributed, but it was our product. And now we are invoking precisely that DNA and saying, we've got challenges. As David Makura, our Premier, was saying here this evening, we face enormous challenges. And these challenges have got to be resolved by all of us working together. I thought, let me just put that across and give you a sense of what is moving me or motivating me to keep moving forward, because these are the three overriding issues that are like the propellers that are getting me to move forward. Now, in answering some of your questions, I'll keep on delving into the issues that I've just mentioned. Zola says, what am I going to do to make the state more efficient? Particularly a state that will be fair in allocating resources, and he's in the aviation industry. Now, clearly one of the issues in renewing South Africa is about getting the state to function efficiently and effectively and also efficiently. Now, we all agree that what we are seeing on our television screens about state capture has had a devastating negative impact on the state. State institutions were targeted, literally targeted to be weakened. And some of those were economic institutions, and some were criminal justice institutions, and some were even social type institutions. They were all targeted, weakened, so that a whole number of malfeasance can then happen. And that is something that we now have to deal with. We've got, as we're hearing through the Zondo Commission, some of these things, I now know that we have our job cut out. We've got to rebuild some of the institutions. You've all heard what happened to the Revenue Service. SARS was just destroyed, like with a big hammer. They just went in and destroyed. Now we've got to rebuild. We've got to rebuild the morale of the people. Some of the people have left because they couldn't stand what was happening. Great minds and greatly talented people have left. Now we've got to bring all that back. The resolve to do work for the people of South Africa, rebuild the institutions, and it's a mammoth task because some of the things then began to introduce a subculture, because subcultures then started evolving, where malfeasance then started happening as part of the subculture, that it is okay to do all the wrong things, to steal money, to overprice services and products and all that through the procurement service. And I'll come back to the question that was raised about the procurement service. So what are we going to do to rebuild that? We've got to have the right people. And we've got to have people who are fit for purpose. We've got to make sure that those who are fit for purpose are put in those positions, rebuild those institutions, and make those institutions function in the way that they should. And that is something that I'm truly committed to. Yes, you say, before the state was captured, it was the ANC that was captured. Yes, as the Zondo Commission unfolds, clarity will even become more apparent on that, because the target was the state institutions, and easily they found a way through utilizing some of the people within our own ranks, something that we have admitted. And let me immediately say, I don't think you can hear many political parties admitting their errors, their missteps, their mistakes, and all that, like the ANC does. The ANC has been brave enough to admit that, and that is one of the things that is going to begin to make our renewal project a much, much, much easier. Now, I should have said earlier, forging unity is not a one-day affair. It doesn't happen just in one day. It's a process. And similarly, renewal is also not a one-day matter. It's a process. Sometimes we will have reversals, and sometimes we will have breakthroughs and move forward. It happened even as we were negotiating our constitution. Sometimes Rolf Meyer and I would think that everything is going well, and we would have reversals. Sometimes something will happen somewhere, reversals. He and I were negotiating nicely and all that, and then Bui Patong then happened. Lots of people are killed. That gave us a reversal. But he and I agreed that in spite of all these things happening, we are going to remain committed to ensuring that we reach our goal and our destination. And I'd like to say similarly with that, the process of renewal having begun, there will be reversals, but in the end, the destination that we are going to is to ensure that the ANC is truly renewed and it is truly united. So, yes, there was capturing that happened, and a number of individuals were taken in and captured, but in the end, we are saying that the soul of the ANC, we want that to remain intact and sacrosanct because it belongs to the people of South Africa. It does not belong to certain interests that want to capture it. So here, by renewing the ANC, we are protecting that soul. We are protecting that legacy that was given to us by those who have come before us, who were honest enough to serve the people of South Africa with great courage and all that. Kasi Okam, he says that the backbone of private enterprise is private ownership, including ownership of a buffalo. Yes, you're right. How can you promote private enterprise and then promote the expropriation of property or land? Now, Kasi, and there was another question that was raised about this. I think we need to understand where this issue of land comes from. As I've been crisscrossing the country, left, right, and center, one of the issues that has been raised, and sometimes it's raised just by ordinary mamas and grandmothers in their homes, because I've been doing quite a lot of home visits as well, or door-to-door as we call it. It's also been the question of land. And this past weekend, I was in the Eastern Cape, both in the former Transkei area and also in the other part of the Eastern Cape. The issue of land keeps coming up, that we need land. We've been relegated to small portions of land, and we need land. Now, land is important, I guess, to all people, but land is very, very important to black people, just as it is important to white people. And what happened in the past, much as we don't want to talk about the past, was a gross injustice. And we've got to admit that. It was a gross injustice where 87% of the land was just given to a few people who were a minority at the time, and 13% to the majority. And that wound, let me tell you, has never been healed. And one also needs to understand why the ANC was formed. In 1912, the ANC was formed. It was not so much to fight for human rights. It was not so much to fight for the vote. It was to fight for the land. So they said, we are forming this organization because we want our land back. And the slogan of the ANC at that time was Maibuye, let our land come back. And that is what was the real mission of the African National Congress. Along the way and over the years, it became much more wholesome. Human rights, there was adherence to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and all that. And it seemed to be diluted a bit, but it remained there. And so at our conference last year, people reflected on the issue that is still a wound and said, there is still a problem. Our people still do not have access to land. And what you sought to do over the years has not really worked. And we now need to change step and to embark on a process where we are going to give hope to our people about the land that should come to them. Now, we've always been saying, we've got a constitution, and there's a constitutional process that is now underway. And the constitution is what we are going to adhere to. And we are law-abiding, and the rule of law must apply. And we've said that this matter is going to be handled with the seriousness and with the delicacy that it requires, because we've got to secure the interests of all South Africans. All South Africans, those who have land, yes, must have a sense that their interests are also being taken into account. And those who don't have land must have a certainty that there is going to be tenure, secure tenure of land ownership. And thereafter, we are saying we need now to work on this together. Now, the social compact that I'm also talking about also touches on very difficult issues such as land. Now, what have we done as a nation? We've started a conversation about land. Prior to 1994, we had a conversation about the right to vote. And some of you might not recall that as we were moving towards finalizing our compact, our agreement to end apartheid, there were 4 issues that remained that almost just derailed everything. And land was one of them. Education, which some of you have mentioned, was another one. And another one was a union-related one, the right to strike. And all those issues, we finally found a way of answering. But the issue of land lingers on. And I guess the issue of education also lingers on. Afrikaans as a language also lingers on. And that has to be addressed, because we cannot run away from it. People who speak Afrikaans have a wound in their hearts about how their own language is being relegated to the back. And we must address it. We cannot run away from it. And I am prepared that we should address it and address it properly, just as we must address the issue of land. And with the land issue, a number of wonderful proposals are coming to the fore. A number of people who own land, various organizations are coming to the fore that we can actually find solutions for all of us. Now, there is the expropriation of land bill that is now in Parliament, of land parcels that would need to be subject to this. And as it is currently drafted, it is saying there's lots of land that either is owned by the government, state-owned enterprises, that needs to be made available to the people, because the hunger for land is quite huge. And there is also land that has been claimed. And the claims have just been lying fallow for quite a long time. Nothing much is being done. I can testify to this because when I visited KZN some months ago, the people in northern KZN raised the issue about their own land, which they had claimed 15 years ago. And when I sought to find out, the file was just lying on somebody's desk and it was not being processed. And soon thereafter, we processed it, and they are now in partnership with a major international forestry company, and they've got their land back, and they are now working their land. And there's just been dereliction of duty in a number of areas that are dealing with this very sensitive issue. There are parcels of land where, for instance, even the ownership is not even clear. And we say those need to be addressed. In the urban areas, there is the hunger for land for people to build houses. And we are saying that too now needs to be addressed. And governments, provincial governments are finding clever ways of dealing with this. In Gauteng, that they are doing so. In KZN, they are doing exactly the same thing. So rather than people should be terrified and scared about this issue, we are saying, let's work together. Let's find solutions together. The one thing that I've always said that will never be allowed is to have land grabs. We are going to solve this problem, working together and finding solutions that are fit for South Africa. Because as South Africans, we've been able to find solutions for the most difficult and almost intractable problems. We found solutions. We've got great minds in our nation, and those great minds are going to be put to work to make sure that we do find solutions. So, much as we live in a country where, yes, there's private ownership, but we also have a hybrid type of system. There are processes where there's private ownership and there's communal ownership. Quite a bit of the land that is now being claimed is for communal ownership, and the Constitution recognizes that for public interest. And a number of our people are saying, we do not even want this for our own sole ownership. We want it for the community, because an injustice was done against a community, where a community was moved. And I want to digress, because the place where my mother was born, they were moved as a community, a whole community was moved near Louis Trichardt, or Makado now. And years later, after the claim had been put in, we were all brought in there as grandchildren. They said, here is your land, the land where your forebears were removed. The healing process then started, because the wound that had been caused when the entire community of more than 500 households was removed and the land was given to Mr. Steenkamp alone, caused a devastating wound which took years to heal. And it was only when all of us were called to say, now you can have the piece of land back as a community, that the healing process then started. So this is a serious matter. And because it is serious, we need to address it collectively and jointly. Just as serious as the time when black people did not have a vote in the country of their birth. It is just as serious as that. But we sat down and we addressed the problem and said, yes, it is fair, it is correct, it is just that everyone in South Africa should have a vote. And we arrived at a good conclusion. Similarly, on this one, we've got to find a solution, because we will not be able to have stability in our country unless we address this issue. If we're dreaming of stability, we must also be dreaming about the fairness, the justice, and the South Africanness that all of us must embrace, working together and making sure that we find solutions. This country is just far too beautiful for us not to work together to find solutions. Psychologist, I didn't get your name. We've had a sad and traumatic past. This is precisely part of the point. The healing process needs to carry on, and the TRC scratched the surface. We need dedicated programs so that we can work through our traumas. It is true. We do need dedicated programs, and at government level, and we are open to various suggestions here. At government levels, we keep on saying, let us all unite, build a nation, have social cohesion. Because one of the things that Nelson Mandela did for us was to give us a very good foundation to become a nation. And he utilized a number of iterations, if you like. You know, wearing the Springbok jersey was one of those. People may have dismissed that, but it was a nation-building process. Now, what it required is reciprocation, that all of us as South Africans must feel that we now must be meshed into one nation, whereas in the past we were divided. And that is why I often say, and I'll continue saying it, that our South Africanness sometimes has to be demonstrated. We've got to demonstrate it, for instance, when we have national days. I must say this here and today. White people hardly ever come to occasions when we have national days. When we had the Human Rights Day, 21st of March, I saw a sputtering of white people and I applauded that. And I said, this is good. And sometimes it must be a deliberate demonstration so that our people must see that we are embracing one another. We are becoming the nation that Nelson Mandela envisioned and dreamt about, and the nation that we all love and applaud, so that we can begin to whittle away all these adherences to the old past, the old flags and all that, because we've got something new that unites all of us. We've got something that we should all embrace, and that is part of dealing with the trauma, because we were traumatized, and I'm glad that psychologists are actually beginning to articulate that more openly, that the system that we went through was a traumatic system. And we therefore right now need to have a healing process, and I just wish we could expand it more and more. Yes, the TRC was good, and it was a cathartic moment for us as a nation. And a number of other nations are seeking to copy this, and people like Rolf Meyer and Ibi Ibrahim are spreading the message as they try to go around the world to solve world problems and conflicts and all that, that there is a need, yes, to have a TRC type of process so that there can be a healing process. Now, somehow I think we stopped. We stopped, and we need to re-embark on this healing process because we've been through trauma, and it is necessary that we should embrace one another. But let me immediately say, I'm in the farming industry, both cattle and game, and I'm finding that a number of my fellow farmers are extending their hand, skilling, black people, recognizing that the land dispossession process actually de-skilled a number of black people, and reskilling them and introducing them to the real professional farming processes. And those are some of the things that a number of people are doing around the country, and they need to be applauded, and they need to be recognized as well. So a number of programs, nation-building programs are being embarked upon so that we can actually feel our South Africanness. And as part of that, it is on the ANC itself to continue stressing and preaching the message of non-racialism, that South Africa belongs to all of us who live here, and that what matters first is us as South Africans before we even begin to talk about what racial groups we are. So the ANC's message of non-racialism becomes central in this. And yes, there was a time when we kind of weakened on this. We kind of weakened, and to a point where a number of other people were feeling that, we are not really so well accepted. And I can say it without any doubt. A number of colored people in our own ranks have said, we don't feel truly welcome. And also Indian people and some white people, and we have said, the ANC stands for non-racialism. We are going to reinvigorate our commitment, because that is the only way South Africa can have a chance to go into the future. other parties will always be stressing all these other matters. And it touches on the other question that was raised about, maybe I'll come to it in a little while, about African nationalism. Tambo Maganda and our PhD students talks about climate change. And I'm glad that there are people who are working on climate change and who are also studying it. And you say that you are told that agriculture is the backbone of the economy. Yes, it is. And maybe we haven't laid a lot of emphasis on agriculture. And it is something that we're now going to be putting more and more emphasis on. Because learning a lot of lessons from other countries. Countries such as Ethiopia, they have gone out of their way to train 60,000 extension officers, and they've spread them throughout the country. Today, agriculture is the biggest contributor to their GDP and to their GDP growth as well. And that has taught us quite a lot of lessons. And they are able to, on a wall-to-wall basis, make sure that their agricultural activities are able to create a lot of jobs, and many people are employed in their agriculture. The National Development Plan, which we drafted, said that South Africa can create 1 million jobs, easily 1 million jobs, but there are other people who say you can actually create 2 million jobs by getting our people to work the land, the agri-processing. But they've also said that what stands us in good stead is that with the signing of the Free Trade Area Agreement of the African Union, Africa is now open for us, wide open for us, the more industrialized nation on the African continent, to be able to feed the whole of Africa through agri-processing, because we can produce products, we can process them, and we can also set up factories in various parts of the continent because we have the know-how. And this is precisely the markets that are opening for us. So therefore, agriculture plays a critical role. The stimulus program that we announced last year, some of you may recall, we set aside quite a bit of money to be allocated to revamping agriculture. And in a number of parts of the country, it's already started, it's already going ahead, and we are now going to be using the implementation model that we've evolved to ensure that as it is spread throughout the country, there is no wastage of money, there's no stealing of money, and the money finally goes to those who need it most, who are the people who are working in agriculture. So I believe that, I agree with you, we are going to sort of upscale agriculture because it offers great opportunities, and those who have actually been working at it say in a clear way, in a very defined way, we can create quite a lot of jobs. Mr. Johan van Tonder, why are we continuing to export jobs? We continue to import products, and you hear a lot about transformation, but we don't talk about excellence. And I'd like to thank you for putting this across, because yes, there is a lot that we can do not to export jobs. And our economy is at a stage now where we need to sit back and relook at what we've been doing in the past. Of course, our economy has structural difficulties and challenges. But at the same time, there's a lot that we can do to make sure that we don't continue to export jobs and just allow those other countries to come to our country to sell things. In my conversation with President of China, Xi Jinping, we raised the issue of the deficit that we have with China. And he said, we are open. Please come forward to us and tell us what you can sell to us so that we can come and buy as much as we possibly can from you. Now, in a number of ways, we haven't taken advantage of this, and it is what is open. But at the same time, we now need to be supporting our own enterprises. And I like the idea that was raised by someone, which I will come to, about how the private sector can raise funding and we can match. Because in doing so, we see real commitment by the private sector, and we can match that so that we begin to grow our own companies and make sure that they focus on making products that we can export to other countries. Africa, for me, is really where we should be playing. And in fact, Africa as a continent is our biggest trading partner, but at the same time, we now need to be making focused products so that they no longer buy from Europe. And they also admit that they are spending quite a lot of money buying goods from Europe. I mean, they buy things like tins of fish. They could be buying them from us. They buy them from Europe, from France, and all that. We can be taking market share from a number of those European countries and making sure that we export to those countries. And that way, we won't be exporting jobs. Now, the issue about excellence, I would see excellence and transformation going together. But I'm glad that you have raised the issue of excellence, and you have also suggested that you're going to start writing my speeches for me. I welcome that. So come be my speechwriter and then put some of those ideas on excellence in. And I put it as fit for purpose, because we've got to have people who are fit for purpose, and once they are fit for purpose, then they then accede to excellence. And then transformation becomes a wonderful, wonderful derivative of all that. So I welcome your idea on that. Jan Erasmus from Bitter Enders, I think I heard that, is worried about the rhetoric about the past and worried about the new type of black nationalism. It reeks a lot like Afrikaner nationalism. Afrikaner nationalism was a response to what the English had done to Afrikaners. It was a response. And Afrikaners felt the need to reassert themselves because the British, as we all recall, had done some really horrible and terrible things to the Afrikaners. The war, the South African war that happened, where a number of women and children were killed in concentration camps, really needed a response, and the response was Afrikaner nationalism. So it started rising, and it rose and rose. The sad part about Afrikaner nationalism is that it then manifested itself through exclusion. It became so exclusive that Afrikaners then believed then that they are über alles, they are above everyone else, and then started then oppressing other people through the laws, through the way they went about expressing their own identity. And that is where the problem was. Now, you may recall, in the 70s, there was a black consciousness. And I also am a product of the black consciousness movement. Black consciousness was a response to Afrikaner nationalism, where black people were saying, we are proud to be black, we have our own identity, and we must get together as black people. And the response of the Afrikaners was then to try and crush that. But the difference with what you're calling black nationalism, which I'm not really even beginning to call it that, is that it is underpinned by a South Africanness. There is just no intention, no way whatsoever, where one group will see itself as being above the other and oppressing the other. So it is a sense of affirmation, people affirming themselves like we did with the Black Consciousness Movement. It affirmed us, it emboldened our identity and formed that identity to be able to stand and say, we are black, are proud, and we are equal to those who are seeking to subjugate us. Now, what you are calling black nationalism, which I'm not calling that, is about black people saying, we want one transformation, we want to be acknowledged, we want to be recognized, and it is a response to something that they perceive is happening. Because in certain quarters, there is still that hegemony that seeks to look down upon black people, and once that happens, a sense of black nationalism will come to the fore. But all I can say is that it's never ever going to be a process through which the one group will say, we are better than you, we are therefore going to subjugate you and oppress you, like Afrikaner nationalism manifested itself. Well, BLF is a voice out there in the wilderness. That's all you should regard it as. Voice in the wilderness. Just like you had the Boeremag. We had the Boeremag, and we also had Eugene Tereblanche. Let's not forget. And Eugene Tereblanche, as he was doing his things on the horse and falling and all that, many people, many Afrikaners said, he does not represent what we stand for as Afrikaners. That's what it was. Which brings me to the colleague who said this young child was asking, what have white people done? Can a race be found guilty? My answer is no. It is individuals. It is the actions of individuals, and this is what we have also seen in the past. But then if individuals then act together and form, a massive movement, then it becomes a problem. And we are saying, let's see things for what they are. The left and all that, the Boeremags and so forth. And in the end, as Nelson Mandela said, South Africans are people who are sensible, who are good in their hearts, and that's precisely what we are. Those people who are trying to tear us apart through adhering to all these slogans and rhetoric are never ever going to succeed. We are just too good for that, because we've now become united around a constitution which says that we recognize what happened in the past, but we have now embraced a new future, and this new future is what is guiding us. And colleagues, let's stick to that new future that is taking us forward. Now, Gerrit Viljoen says, if we vote for you, are we then left with them, with others? And I, 10 years later or whatever. Now, all I would say is that the ANC is in the process of a great renewal. And sometimes, these things happen as we don't see them. Sometimes, yes, there will be sort of occasions where it becomes so public and so obvious that we get terrified. With the VBS thing that happened in Limpopo, where mayors had invested money and money was stolen in the VBS, I often say that it was at the local area, in the provincial area, and it was the provincial leadership of the ANC that took action and said, the mayors who were responsible for this thing that has caused a lot of anguish amongst ordinary mamas and papas and grandmothers must be removed. And they went ahead and removed them, because they are in a process of renewing the ANC, and which made me remember what Xi Jinping has done. Now, Xi Jinping in China, this is a party that has 96 million members. 96 million members. And I asked him, how have you been keeping this together. He says two things, only two things. One is discipline in the party, that there must be discipline. And if you are not disciplined and you are found to have done things that are wrong, action will be taken. And two, the rule of law. And he says, that's what we've been sort of implementing. And he says, for the first time in 5,000 years, the Communist Party, or China as a whole, because the Communist Party only started in the 20s or so, is now able to get a grip, a full grip on corruption, malfeasance, and lack of adherence to the rule of law. And he says it has taken us a long time. And he says, now we have arrived at a moment where China is now able to grow effectively because we are able to deal with corruption, we are able to deal with indiscipline in the party, and that is what is making us a gigantic growth force in the world as well. And I admired what he said. And I said, yes, because we're both political organizations, it's a process, and this is a process that we're going to embark upon. So, Mr. Viljoen, you will continue seeing progress, and sometimes you'll see reversal. But I promise you, as I said right at the beginning, we are forever going to move forward, because what we are doing now is irrevocable. It is going to continue going forward. We will be dealing with malfeasance, we'll be dealing with indiscipline within the party. Mr. Hofmeyer says the history of South Africa is a contradiction between the dream and the nightmare. So he says, I see you as a dream and the ANC as a nightmare. This talks to precisely what I've been saying. And you want to know, what are you going to do in 9 weeks? Did you say 9 days or 9 weeks? He says, in 9 days, there's going to be this election. What can I do to promise the nation in the next 9 days, it's now 8 days, I believe, about what will happen next in 9 weeks of the new government? What I am saying, the foundation that I laid right at the beginning, is precisely what we're going to do. We're going to continue on this path that we have embarked upon. The renewal of the ANC is a serious matter. I would not be doing this if there wasn't a clear mandate of renewal. The renewal is about being serious and getting the African National Congress back to its value system, to the principles that were there when the ANC was formed. And we are now going to infuse all that into government. We're going to make sure that in government we get rid of malfeasance, we get rid of corruption, we get rid of all the bad behaviors. Now, because a subculture has evolved, has sort of embedded itself, it really, there's a new way of life, a new way of doing things that embedded itself. That is what we now have to prize out, to remove. And sometimes it's going to be difficult, it's going to be painful, but we are going to do it. It is going to take some time. Just like, for instance, dealing with the economy of our country. The economy of our country is not just, boom, after the 8th is going to turn around and become a humming economy which will give us 5 or 6% growth. It will be difficult because the destruction that has happened has been happening over years. But now we have a chance as South Africans to rebuild this. Mr. Kamfa says arms were destroyed at some stage, and the minister said that in the future there will be a time when there won't be a need to have firearms. I can sense from what you're saying, you want to continue having your guns, your firearms for self-protection. I hear you very clearly. And you say the registry is in disarray. Yes, any registry, including this one, as well as the property one, needs to be put in proper shape. I agree with that. But let me tell you my own approach on this. And my approach is born out of out of an experience that I had. I went to Vietnam a few years ago. Now, Vietnam is a country that has fought wars with mighty nations in the world. The Chinese, they fought. The Vietnamese tried to subjugate them. They warded them off. Then came the French. The French fought the Vietnamese and they also warded them off. Then the Americans. Now, Vietnam, they say, was one of those countries where nearly everyone was armed, even young children. Everybody was armed with either a hand grenade or a AK-47 or whatever gun and so forth. They say they were heavily armed. They had to arrive after the wars that they fought and triumphed, by the way. They had to arrive at a stage of saying, we must now de-arm. We must disarm ourselves, and the only people who are now allowed to bear arms are soldiers. Not even police. They said, not even police, but only when it is necessary. But ordinarily, they don't bear arms, only soldiers who might have to fight a war and defend the country and all that. And I went through the whole of Vietnam. I did not see a single police official with a gun. And I said, to me, this looks so ideal. And I said, would we have it in South Africa? Maybe the time has not yet arrived, because we still have a number of problems. Crime is still a major problem, and many people who are killed by guns. And there's poverty, and people need to defend themselves and so forth. So I am going to want a conversation to start in South Africa about the bearing of arms. I'm going to want in time to say, let us have a conversation. Will time come where we actually say, let us all disarm so that we no longer have guns, the guns that are killing so many people. We've become the murder capital of the world. So many people are being killed, and many of them are being killed by guns. The cash in transit heists are done by guns and so forth. I want us to have that type of conversation, but you want the registry to be fixed, and I agree with you. It must be fixed, but at the same time, there needs to come a time when we have that type of conversation. A lady asked a question on basic education. She's involved in that, about procuring in schools is impossible. And could we have a review of this issue of tablets, because it's going to cost us 29 billion rand. And instead of computer labs and so forth. Now, let me start off by saying the problem of procuring, the building of infrastructure, particularly school, is quite a huge challenge, a big challenge. And the overpricing, which you spoke about, has become an impossible problem. And is there a way out of this? I believe there is a way out of this. We're now looking at the implementation, or what you would call a delivery model. A delivery model that is going to ensure that we involve as many people in the community as possible and reduce the expenses or the costs that need to be spent in putting up infrastructure such as schools and so forth. Because a number of companies and a number of people see government coming. They overcharge and overprice things, and this is what I would like us to reduce, because at times we find that you can actually build schools or infrastructure very cost effectively without having to spend lots of money. So I'm with you on that. On tablets, I think we would like to have a discussion and a conversation, and it's not too late. We have, as set out in our manifesto, said this is what we would like to do. In other countries it has worked, and we are hoping that it will work with ours. And where it has been implemented, and particularly in Gauteng and in the Western Cape, it's working extremely well. And it's just improving the outcomes of education. And as we go towards the fourth industrial revolution, I am a firm believer, not because I love gadgets, which I do. I'm a firm believer in saying that we've got to use the type of instruments that our children find most appealing and most interesting, and that they can sort of understand. And young children who've been given some of these gadgets have just demonstrated to us this, this is the way we should go. I had occasion to go to Mexico some years ago and met teachers from Canada, and we were just talking about ICT and all that, and they really shocked me. They said, in Canada, in some areas of one of their states, they're already teaching 2-year-olds coding. And he says, we give them gadgets and we're already teaching them coding at 2 years old. Now, that's the message I'm spreading now. I'm saying, I'm on a big drive to say, when all our children get into early childhood development centers, and those centers must have teachers who are well-trained, and I want them in there as early as 3 years old. They must get into those centers equipped. Yes, I agree, we must have computer labs. I had the greatest joy the other day when we were deep in the rural areas in KZN when we were opening 3 schools. And grade R children were already using tablets, real tablets, and they were having great fun with a projection on a sort of on a screen. And I saw for myself that maybe we've been a bit too late. We have been late, but we've got to train the teachers. We've got to make sure that the teachers are trained. Now, Yuri van Vieren, I think I answered the question on expropriation of land and how are we going to do that. That I answered. But how are we going to unlock entrepreneurship? Now, this is an important issue here. As I've been going through the townships, as just driving through the townships, much as I would have preferred to be driving myself, without all these many cars that they impose on me, but each time we drive through the townships, I make it a point to start looking, counting the number of businesses that are in every street in the township. I was with our premier the other day, David Makura, and I told him, I said, Comrade David, are you looking and counting the businesses that we're finding in each street? In one street, we counted 27 businesses. People are running businesses in the townships. They're entrepreneurs. What do we need to do is to unshackle them, to unlock opportunities for them. And I'm now saying that, people now need a step change because each one runs a little, kiosk in front of their home, or they use their home as a business center, either a spaza shop or so on and so on. And those people need us to give them an uplift and create markets. The rest of the African continent has markets. And as I've been visiting, people in their homes, they say, we are tired of going to town. We need a mall. They say we need a mall. And I say, you don't need a mall, you need a market. You need a marketplace here in the township where everyone can do business and where everyone can go and buy. And by doing so, we'll be able to unlock great opportunities for our people. Somebody who says he's a citizen of South Africa, I didn't get the name. How are you going to get South Africa working in the same direction if you give you 2 terms? How will South Africa be changed? Well, I'd like to believe that quite a bit of what I've been saying talks to the change that we want to see. The first thing that we've got to do really is the economy. It's about the economy, stupid, as Bill Clinton said. We've got to get our economy growing. We've got to reform our economy. Now, last year, we had something that many people thought we would never have. We kept meeting the private sector. And this is the compact building that I was talking about. We met the private sector, we met a number of business organizations and said, what is it that we should do as South Africa to make ourselves more attractive? They raised a number of issues that we are addressing. They raised issues of the mining charter, the spectrum, visas, and the regulatory burden that businesses have, and many, many others. And we said, thank you, we are going to start doing that precisely. And then I really got mad in my head. I said, I want us to raise 1.4 trillion rand, $100 billion in the next 5 years. My colleagues thought I had lost it. They said, President, didn't say it to my face. They said it amongst themselves. They thought, I think the president has lost it. I said, this is an area of focus. We are going to raise $100 billion, 1.4 trillion rand. We held this conference, which you probably all know, able to raise almost 300 million rand. And these are real commitments, and we've already started seeing those commitments being realized. A number of companies are coming forward. Some people thought, no, this is not new capacity. And many of them, if not all, are new capacity. Money to be invested in a country where people were saying, no, people will never want to invest here. Now, that is a contribution towards turning our economy around and creating jobs. And we are beginning to see those monies coming through, the investments happening. We're going to have another one later this year. And we aim to raise more money there as well. As we are reforming, as we are changing, so that we become more attractive. And I've said to both business and community leaders and labor, and I've said, we're willing to listen. What we think we can do, we will do. Where, for instance, we differ completely, we will be able to draw a line and say, here we differ. And we are engaging with the business community, and we are saying, free your balance sheets. Because a number of our companies' balance sheets are replete with a lot of money, reserves, and all that. And we say, unlock those reserves and invest in the economy. And clearly, there are quite a number of other things that we need to keep on doing. And of course, they complain about interest rates and all that. And we say we are going to create a good environment for businesses to grow. We're going to look at the townships, make sure that in the townships we do create an environment where businesses, those many businesses that I'm talking about, can grow. In the rural areas, we're going to focus on agriculture. And I now want us to focus on industries, to have a closer look at every industry and say, what is it that we can do to ignite the growth of the economy? So my focus is on the economy, and the rest of the other things then follow, because we need also to improve the lives of South Africans, make sure that there's good service delivery, but also improve governance. Local government is another area where we need to focus, because I've often said that investments don't take place in the union buildings. Investments take place in the local area, in the local municipality. That is where investments happen, and that is precisely where we are now going to repair. This moment of campaigning has given us the opportunity to also see the big challenges that our people are facing. You've been seeing a lot of service delivery protests. Yes, they often reach their zenith point during elections, but underneath that, it's a cry by our people for better service delivery, which I want to address and attend to. And we are going to address those issues that our people are complaining about, because we're going to close the taps. Where money is being stolen, we will close those taps. We will stop corruption. Whether people like it or not, it is going to happen. So that is the offering. That is the offering that we're making. We're going to make sure that we do things right, and we want to get South Africa moving. We want to get South Africa working. Johnny Ngwenya from Infinity, they deal with robotics. We need to change the future and ensure that the children have great opportunities. That's precisely what we're focusing on. And you are the one who spoke a little bit about the fourth industrial revolution as well. We're focusing on that. Chris upstairs spoke about the MEC in Gauteng, centralizing the powers of school governing bodies. What will we do to ensure that Afrikaans does not die? Now, we don't want any language to die. That is for sure. That, for me, is a given. We even, listen to this. This is now the wonderful thing about South Africa. We are even reviving and bringing back to life language that was like long dead. A language that was first spoken in our country was the Khoisan language. That was the first language ever spoken by lived here, being taught in some schools in the Northern Cape. It is actually being spoken. Now, we don't want that language to die. We want it to be alive, and similarly, we cannot want Afrikaans to die. Afrikaans must not die, not only because it is spoken, if you like, by the majority of people in our country, but because it is a valuable and important language that is spoken by people. It is not a language that is spoken by, whatever. It's spoken by people. So our constitution dictates that we must protect it. It dictates that we must promote it. It dictates that we must preserve it. And that's precisely what we're going to do. We are going to preserve Afrikaans. Daardie taal sal mooi gepraat word hier in Suid-Afrika. So, the issue with governing bodies and so forth, those are issues that can be dealt with, that can be addressed. The concerns that are there, we don't even need to toy about that. Those issues can be spoken about, they can be addressed, because where there are issues, including what the MEC has done, these are issues we can talk about and say, this is not really working as well as it should. And he has a rationale and a real good reason why he has moved in that way. But these are matters that we can talk about. Who says is Tosha, who's a serial entrepreneur in Pretoria, and he spoke about something that appeals to me. And he says, in Sydney, they match funding of entrepreneurs. What do I think of a plan like that? I like it. I really like it, because what it does do is to show that an entrepreneur has skin in the game. It's not just an entrepreneur who wants a handout. They have skin in the game. They go out, scratch around, and try and find funding for their projects. Having done that, yes, there should be a way. I don't know whether we will ever have enough money to match what the private sector can give, but we can find ways in which government can be supportive. Swart, who says he's a graduate in engineering, he says previous climate predictions were understated. Now we sit on abundant solar resources. How are we going to utilize those resources properly? All I can say to you is that we want to utilize all our resources more than properly. Already we are the leader in the world in as far as renewable energy installations are concerned. Recently, unless we've been overtaken a little bit by some European country or so, but we've been the leader, and we've been doing extremely well, and we want to keep to that. We want to keep to that cause of being the leader, and we're used to being leaders in many things. Gert van der Walt, I think I answered your question. I want to meet your boy one day. You just arrange it that I can meet your boy. I had the greatest joy of meeting these two girls. Some of you may have seen it on social media. The poster that bears my face had been blown away. I don't know whether somebody had cut it off or not, and it was in the road, and the cars were driving over it, and they went and picked it up. And I met them, and I said, "Thank you for saving my life." Now, the NHI programs are failing. I would not agree with that. Some of them are really successful. And I've been to some of the test clinics in a number of places, in Mpumalanga and a number of places. I've seen how the NHI is trying to revamp. And how are we going to finance the NHI? We have already budgeted some money to finance that. And in the end, what we are seeking to do with the NHI is really to make our national health to be much more effective. Because the problem that we've got is, we've got a small percentage, about 16% of our people who are on medical aid and so forth, and the government also sort of subsidizes those quite heavily, and once they have exhausted their medical aid allowances, they then flock to the private sector, to the public sector, and the public sector therefore has to look after them. The World Health Organization says on healthcare we are the most unequal country in the world, and much more unequal than the United States of America. And this is the World Health Organization that looks at all countries in the world. If you look at the graph, you will see that we are not standing pretty because of the healthcare architecture that we've got in our country. And many countries in the world are moving more and more towards universal healthcare, which is the national healthcare insurance that we are going to. They are moving more and more away from the type of, overall privatized healthcare, because in the end, the state is subsidizing. The tax rebates that we all get as members of private healthcare schemes are subsidized by the state. And in the end, we're finding that the state is subsidizing those who are rich much more than it is actually subsidizing those who are poor. And in the world, this is now the general process that's unfolding. The rich subsidize the poor. It is a trend all over the world, particularly in Europe. The sick, the healthy subsidize the sick. And the urban subsidize the rural. Now, this is about solidarity. And if you care to know, our tax system is about solidarity. And that is why many of us who are seated here, are taxed much more than the people who earn much less. So that is solidarity. And it is something that we can never run away from. It exists all over the world. And in countries like Sweden, they tax you to up to 70, 75%. But then in the end, they then take on the responsibility of saying, we will provide good services for everyone. And that is where we are now migrating to. And it will take us time. National health insurance will take some time to get there. Now, obviously, we want students, medical students, to find a place to be properly utilized in our healthcare. And that we don't want to lose the bright minds. We don't want bright minds to be migrating and leaving our shores. The lady did not say who her name was, but all I know is that she's a single mother. She's concerned about the price of petrol and electricity, and we need to regulate. Now, my sister, what I can say to you is that countries that have regulated petrol, regulation in the end is almost subsidization, have run into serious, serious fiscal or budgetary problems. Now, obviously, we go through highs and lows. And obviously, when the price comes down, our authority then reduces the price. And of course, we are happy, we don't complain. When it goes up, it bites. And we agree that it does bite, particularly in an environment where the economy is not growing as well as it should. So on this one, the dangerous route we could take is to go regulation and subsidization. The only thing we could possibly, have done in the past is to remove some of the levies but the levy is about accident fund. Road accident fund, that's where the levy is all about. So we need now to see how that is balanced, and it's an exchange problem, as well as the price of oil keeping going up. But I hear you, and we tried earlier last year to try and address this issue. And it's going to be a recurring problem, but I hear what you're saying. Someone said in Mamelodi and Lodium, students wait to be invited, they don't want to apply. Everybody must apply. You must apply. You know, in China, in their universities, they only have so many seats, and they've got like almost 20 million young people who are trying to. Of data in South Africa is the highest. We agree, it is high, and a lot of pressure is being put on our mobile companies to reduce the price of data. Now, they used to earn most of their money from voice, and when voice started going down, they realized that they can earn more money from data, and they hyped prices, and they are now under a great deal of pressure to lower those. Now, that also is going to be driven by releasing the spectrum. We're now going to release the spectrum, and they argue that once the spectrum is released, then they will be able to have a reduction of prices. So there is a window to the future on this, and I think we will get to the same level as other countries in the future. So colleagues, those are the real questions that were asked, or the fourth industrial revolution, just more broadly. It is already here with us. And we obviously need to embrace the fourth industrial revolution, and that's precisely the message that we have been spreading. Artificial intelligence is here, biotechnology is here, coding is here, and all those things, Internet of Things is here, and these are things that now need to be also taught in our schools, but they also need to drive what we do, how we live, and how we work. I had occasion to be invited by the International Labour Organization to be chairman of the concept they call Future of Work, together with the Prime Minister of Sweden. And we were looking at what does the future of work look like? Are people going to be replaced by machines? Is climate change going to destroy jobs? Is growing globalization also going to destroy jobs? And the conclusion we came to is that jobs are going to be created, and great opportunities with climate change, great opportunities with all these new technologies that are coming. And all we need to do is to give our people pathways to migrate from one to the other. And they call it just transition. For instance, as we install more and more renewable energy installations and move away from coal, and in our country we may never really be able to move from coal very much, because the base load of our energy is still going to remain coal for quite a long time. But the renewable energy is going to keep going up, and we now need to give our workers a just transition, and the fourth industrial revolution plays a critical role in that. So we need to raise the level of consciousness of all South Africans to realize that indeed the fourth industrial revolution is here, and we must embrace it. Colleagues and fellow South Africans, I want to end up by saying we've got a great opportunity that lies ahead of us. And possibly, other than in 1994, this is possibly the greatest opportunity that we have to remake our country, to renew our country, to refashion South Africa, rebuild it according to our own dreams. This is an important moment. We've been through a cathartic period in the past few years. But the important thing is that we are still here, we are still standing. We came to the precipice, to the brink, but we are still here. And this is an opportunity that is being given to us. And I want to invite you all to join me on this journey. This is a most important journey of rebuilding, renewing, reforming our country. Join me on this journey so that we can reshape our country and make it the country that we all want it to be. This is a great, great opportunity that we all have as South Africans. And I often say, we are almost like, in an aeroplane, and most of us have flown before. It's an aeroplane that's on the runway. It's on the runway, the pilots are in place, the steward and stewardesses are in place, it's humming, it's revving, it's about to take off. The key question for me is whether you are going to be a passenger on that plane. That for me is the key question. And I'm saying, come join me. You've sought to make me the pilot of this plane. I'm ready to fly this plane. Join me and be a great passenger on this plane. Let us fly South Africa off, because we are destined for great things. And let us join in and be Tumamina advocates, all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Ramaphosa. You have indeed answered the questions in full, and I'm sure you agree, ladies and gentlemen, that tonight our President has spoken to us from the heart. I'm now going to call on Dr. Gerard Koonhof to give us a vote of thanks.
Baie dankie, Barbara. Meneer die president, dit wat sopas hier gebeur het, dat u 'n staande ovasie in die Atterbury Theater in Linwood gekry het, wys watter dink die mense van u het, dat u die leier van hierdie land is. Meneer die president, u 3 mandate uitgespel vanaand. En as u daarin slaag, dan wen ons almal. Want dan ons 'n skoon ANC en ons het 'n skoon Suid-Afrika. En ons kan Suid-Afrika hernie. So dankie vir dit. U het vanaand geluister na 'n president wat 'n baie goeie begrip van ons geskiedenis het. En hy het 'n visie om alle Suid-Afrikaners bymekaar te bring en in 'n nuwe toekoms in te bou. Meneer die president, u is wat ons mense kan kry om saam te werk en ons probleme saam op te los. En u is die persoon wat kan slaag om ons instellings weer te hernuwe. Die instellings wat vernietig is, weer op te bou en trots te maak. Daar is 'n spreekwoord, as ek kyk wat u die afgelope 15 maande, meneer die president, in hierdie land reg gekry het, dan dink ek ons kan almal uitsien wat u kan doen in die volgende 5 jaar. Daar's 'n spreekwoord wat sê, hoe steiler die berg, hoe steiler die klim, maar mooier is die uitsig as jy op die boonste piek gekom het. En dit is wat ons graag vir u 'n mandaat wil gee. U sal agtergekom dat die president gebruik nie sy presidensiële mag om uitdagings aan te spreek nie. Hy gebruik eerder prosesse, prosedures en wette om uitdagings aan te pak. Dit gaan dan langer tyd mee, maar dis die regte manier om dit te doen. Daar's 'n spreekwoord in Afrikaans. Meneer die president, daar is 'n spreekwoord in Afrikaans. Die lang pad is die kort pad. Die president vat die lang pad, maar dis die regte pad en dis die kort pad. Dankie dat u ingestem het, meneer president, om vanaand hier in die Atterbury Theater te wees, saam met ons mense, die vrae te beantwoord en met ons te kom gesels het. Tweedens, baie dankie aan premier David Makura vir die verwelkoming. Ek begin nou al Afrikaans praat, dus David. Kameraad David. vir die verwelkoming en dat u die president aan die woord gestel het. Baie dankie aan Barbara Krisi wat hierdie verrigtinge met 'n eysterhand hanteer het en dankie dat u al die verrigtinge so glad laat verloop het. Baie dankie Barbara vir dit. En dan aan die mobilisasiespan. Ons het 'n klomp mense gewerk om hier te kry. Rolf Meyer het hard gewerk. Iver Jenkins, Gert Oosthuis en Koetsie Bester, Willie van der Skuif, Johan Deran, Sipho Mbele. Ons is 'n hele klomp mense wat 'n span bymekaar gekry het en sê kom ons kry ons mense bymekaar wat kan luister na die president. Dankie aan die media verteenwoordigers. Ek sien al die tweets het klaar deurgekom wat hier berig oor wat hier gebeur het. Ons is nie hande daaroor. En asseblief tel net reg. Hierdie saal vat 400 mense, ons is 600 mense wat opgedaag het vanaand. En dan aan die bestuur van Atterbury Theater, Paulette en Melanie, vir hulle baie professionele span, wat ons gehelp het om hierdie geleentheid uniek te maak, en ook aan Stephanie van die Lansaan by Stephanie's. En dan die belangrikste, u is hier gehoor. Dankie dat u vanaand opgedaag het. Dankie dat u dit kom bywoon het, dankie vir die vrae wat die president gestel het, want u weet, dames en here, u is die meningsvormers. U is die mense wat kan uitgaan, kan tweet, sosiale media kan gebruik, met vriende, kennis en familie kan praat. En te sê, wat is die ervaring van hierdie president wat ons hierso het, nou al vir 15 maande. Dit is die president wat ons in hierdie land nodig het, om ons in die volgende 5 jaar in te lei. So baie dankie vir u aanmoediging, dankie vir die staande ovasie wat u vir president gegee het. Ek dink dit is uniek. Ek dink nie 5 jaar gelede, 9 jaar gelede sou dit moontlik gewees het nie. Maar vandag is ons aanbeweeg. En hier kry ons 'n gevoel van 'n president wat sê, kom saam met my. Kom klim in hierdie vliegtuig in. Ek gaan hierdie vliegtuig veilig laat opstyg, vlieg en land. En u kry 'n uitnodiging om saam te kom. Ek dink dit is lekker om weer 'n Suid-Afrikaner te wees en so 'n president te hê. En met die leierskap wat op die verhoog sit hierso. Baie dankie. En dan laastens, hy so oorvol die saal, meneer die president, daar het mense agter gesit wat ons glad nie gesien het nie. Hulle het live streaming gehad. Ek groet julle daar agter want julle kan my nie sien nie. Maar dankie dat julle gebly het en met live streaming op televisie gekyk het na die president. Ek kyk na die mense hier Lansaan wat in die gangetjie gesit het. Het nie een persoon die saal verlaat voor die president gaan sit het nie. Baie dankie vir julle. En dan ook in Gossie Maepa. Dankie dat jy vanaand gekom het. Jy is ons leier hierso. Ons kyk op na jou. Baie dankie. Geniet die aand.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our program. You've been a wonderful partner in our conversation this evening, but I do have one final request of you. Please, can you remain in your seats while the President and his entourage leave the hall? And I'm told, President, that you will be going in this direction. So if we can just ask that you please allow the President to go and greet those who have been listening to the live streaming. Don't forget, when you go into the foyer, there should still be tea and coffee for all of you.